Title: Why ADX Florence is called the prison of no return. The man who could never leave. If you think you could survive this place, hit that subscribe button, because by the end of this story, you'll realize why no one ever does. In the middle of the Colorado desert, surrounded by rocky mountains and an endless horizon of sand, sits a fortress that swallows men whole. Officially, it's called the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, ADX Florence. But inside, it has another name whispered by guards and inmates alike: the prison of no return. It's not a myth. It's not an exaggeration. It's where America sends the men too dangerous, too violent, or too powerful to be housed anywhere else. Terrorists, drug lords, mob bosses, and assassins, all locked inside soundproof concrete boxes. But among them, one name echoed through every hallway like a ghost story: Marcus Rain Delano. Marcus had once ruled the streets of Chicago. A criminal mastermind turned self-styled philosopher. He orchestrated one of the most profitable drug networks in the Midwest during the early 2000s. But what made him infamous wasn't just the scale of his empire. It was his mind. He never carried a gun, never touched a product, and yet he was the one everyone feared. He ran his organization like a corporation, controlling hundreds of people from the shadows. When the DEA finally caught him in 2010, the courtroom felt more like a movie premiere. Reporters called him the CEO of crime. Prosecutors called him the most dangerous man who never pulled a trigger. The judge didn't hesitate. Life without parole, sent directly to ADX Florence. The day he arrived, a storm rolled over the mountains. Thunder cracked above the razor wire. The warden, a veteran with 25 years inside, personally watched as Marcus stepped off the transport van in his orange jumpsuit. No cuffs, no struggle, just that calm stare, like he'd expected this all along. Inside ADX, every prisoner lives in a 7 by 12-foot concrete cell. 23 hours a day, no human contact, no sunlight. Meals slide through a slot. Exercise happens in a cage the size of a parking space. Most inmates lose their sanity within months. But Marcus was different. He adapted. He started reading philosophy: Nietzsche, Machiavelli, Sun Tzu. He wrote letters to journalists, to professors, even to rival gang leaders on the outside. None of the letters were violent or incriminating. Instead, they read like sermons about control, structure, and destiny. But something strange began happening. Outside the walls of ADX, small criminal factions started adopting his teachings. They called it the Rain Doctrine, a new philosophy of organized power and discipline in the underworld. The FBI noticed patterns: similar crimes, same methods, same cryptic messages. Someone or something was spreading Marcus's influence from inside the world's most secure prison. No one could figure out how. His mail was screened. His calls were monitored. His visitors were denied. Yet messages kept emerging, each one more precise than the last. An FBI analyst named Sarah Dwyer, obsessed with the case, began to suspect that Marcus wasn't acting alone. Someone inside ADX might be helping him communicate. When she requested internal surveillance footage, the Bureau of Prisons sent hours of grainy, silent video. But what she saw chilled her to the core. In one clip, Marcus sat in his cell, staring directly at the corner camera. For 15 minutes, he didn't move, just stared. Then he blinked 3 times, tilted his head, and tapped his fingers on the table in a rhythmic pattern. The sequence matched a code the FBI had seen before, one used by his former lieutenants during encrypted transmissions. He was sending orders, using the cameras. Sarah brought her findings to the warden, who dismissed it as coincidence. "These men are manipulative," he said. "They make you see ghosts." But Sarah wasn't convinced. Over the next few weeks, she cross-referenced every coded signal she found in surveillance with outside criminal events: drug seizures, disappearances, murders. The timestamps matched too closely to ignore. Marcus was commanding a network from a concrete tomb. Then, one night, a power outage hit the facility, a rare 2-minute blackout that shut down all cameras. When the system rebooted, something was off. The guards on night shift reported seeing strange markings scratched into the walls of multiple cells, symbols resembling chess pieces and Latin phrases. None of the inmates claimed responsibility. But Marcus's cell? Immaculate. Not a single mark. Sarah pushed for a deeper investigation, but before she could, her access to the footage was revoked. An internal memo labeled her findings as speculative and unsubstantiated. The case was quietly buried. 2 weeks later, an encrypted message appeared on the dark web. The rain never ends. It was signed with a symbol identical to one seen in those ADX wall carvings. And the timing? The message was posted exactly 1 hour after Marcus Delano's scheduled lights-out time. Sarah knew what that meant. He was still sending commands, and someone inside was helping him. But when she tried to visit ADX to confront him herself, her request was denied. The official reason, for her own safety. The unofficial reason, Marcus Delano wasn't listed in the current ADX inmate registry anymore. When she demanded an explanation, the Bureau gave none. His file had been sealed. His cell reportedly empty. But the truth? It was worse than anyone imagined. Because beneath ADX Florence, hidden behind layers of classified corridors and reinforced steel, there's a rumor among guards of a fourth tier. A place where inmates disappear and no records follow. Sarah didn't believe it until she received an anonymous envelope at her home. Inside was a single photograph, grainy and blue-tinted, like CCTV footage. It showed a man sitting in a dark cell, staring at the camera. The caption read, "He's not gone. He's waiting." The man behind the wall. The photo haunted Sarah Dwyer. She left it on her desk under a stack of reports, but every time she passed by, that face, the calm, unblinking stare of Marcus Rain Delano, seemed to follow her. She'd seen monsters before. Serial killers. War criminals. But something about him was different. He didn't look dangerous. He looked certain. And certainty, she knew, was far more terrifying than rage. The official bureau line was that Delano had been transferred. Where, they wouldn't say. Why, they refused to explain. National security, they claimed. But Sarah couldn't let it go. Not after years of chasing his case, decoding his messages, tracing his influence through layers of crime networks. Something about ADX Florence felt wrong. Too quiet. Too perfect. She started digging into internal rosters, comparing transfer logs against Bureau of Prisons databases. That's when she found the first red flag. There was no record of a Marcus Delano entering any facility after the supposed transfer. No transport van logs, no signatures, nothing. He'd vanished between one checkpoint and the next. And then came the whisper. A retired correctional officer from Florence, nervous, paranoid, clearly drunk, contacted her through an encrypted email. He refused to give his real name, calling himself Redman. The message was short, almost desperate. He's not gone. They moved him underground. We call it Tier 4. No windows, no noise, no sunlight. You didn't hear this from me. At first, Sarah thought it was another conspiracy theory. The idea of a secret sublevel prison sounded like fiction. But Redman insisted on meeting face-to-face, somewhere public. A diner off the I-25 near Pueblo. When she arrived, he was already there. Hands shaking as he stirred his coffee, eyes darting to every corner of the room. I worked Florence for 16 years, he muttered. You think you've seen isolation? You haven't seen what they built below ground. They call it the Black Hole. It's not on paper, not in maps. It's for the ones they can't afford to let exist. Sarah leaned in. And Delano's there? Redman nodded, his voice cracking. I saw him. Once. After the blackout in 2018. They brought him down with 4 guards. Black masks. No name tags. They said he was reclassified. Reclassified, she repeated. As an asset, he whispered. Not a prisoner. Sarah froze. What kind of asset? But before he could answer, his phone buzzed on the table. He looked down and went pale. Without a word, he stood up and walked toward the restroom, phone clutched tight. He never came back out. When Sarah checked the restroom minutes later, the window was wide open and the man was gone. All that remained was his half-drunk coffee, still steaming. That night, Sarah filed an internal report. But the next morning, her system access was revoked. Her email account wiped. A senior director called her into a meeting, telling her to drop the Delano case immediately. Official reason: overreach beyond jurisdiction. Unofficial reason: she was getting too close. Still, she couldn't stop. She took what she knew and reached out to an old contact at the Department of Justice, someone she trusted. Together, they pulled restricted facility blueprints of ADX Florence. At first glance, it looked normal. 3 levels, each mapped and labeled. But then she noticed something: a blank rectangular zone beneath the lowest tier. No access points, no ventilation systems, just nothing. Except for one thing: a maintenance tunnel marked inactive. That night, Sarah drove to Florence under cover of darkness. She parked 2 miles away, hiked through the scrubland until the towering silhouette of the supermax loomed before her, black against the Colorado moonlight. From the ridge, she saw the floodlights, the guard towers, the endless rows of razor wire. It looked like a military base, cold, mechanical, soulless. But her eyes locked onto something strange. Near the eastern edge, barely visible, was a smaller fenced-off compound with a single elevator shaft leading underground. The inactive tunnel. She waited until the lights cycled. Then she moved. Cutting through brush and shadows, she slipped close enough to photograph the entrance. The metal plate on the door read, "Secure Maintenance Access, Authorization Level 7. Level 7 didn't exist in Bureau records. She stepped back, heart pounding, when she heard it, footsteps behind her. Not hurried, not panicked. Slow, deliberate. "Agent Dwyer," a deep voice said. "You're not supposed to be here." She turned. A tall man in a black tactical jacket stood there, unmarked uniform, no insignia. His face unreadable in the dim light. "Who are you?" she demanded. He stepped closer. "Someone trying to keep you alive." "You're covering this up." He sighed. "You think you're chasing a ghost, but what you're actually doing is pulling on a wire connected to something much larger than Delano. He's part of a system now. You can't expose him without exposing them." "Them?" But the man didn't answer. He pulled a small envelope from his jacket and handed it to her. "If you're smart, you'll burn this after you read it." Then, without another word, he vanished into the dark. Inside the envelope was a single page, typed and signed. It read, "The prison of no return was never built to contain men like Marcus Delano. It was built to control them. You think he's locked away, but ADX Florence doesn't bury criminals. It recruits them." Below the text was a list of names. Half were men Sarah recognized, infamous inmates. The other half? Unfamiliar, but one stood out, circled in black ink. Marcus Delano, Tier 4, Behavioral Program. Status, Active Operator. Her breath caught. Active Operator? That wasn't a prisoner classification. It was a designation, meaning Delano wasn't being punished anymore. He was working for someone. She stared out toward the dark outline of the prison as realization set in. The whispers, the coded messages, the power outages. It wasn't rebellion. It was coordination. ADX Florence wasn't the end of Delano's empire. It was where it began again. And someone on the inside was helping him rebuild it, one hidden message at a time. But before Sarah could uncover who, another encrypted email hit her private account that night. No sender. No trace. It contained just 2 words. Next target, Denver. And the signature symbol, the same one carved into the walls of ADX. The prison that thinks. The Denver morning was still and cold when the explosions hit. 3 synchronized blasts, downtown, a parking garage, and a government records facility. Within minutes, the entire city froze under the grip of chaos. Emergency sirens screamed, cell networks went dark, and the city's skyline bled smoke into the pale Colorado sky. But for Agent Sarah Dwyer, the sound wasn't just terror, it was confirmation. Delano's warning hadn't been a bluff. It was a declaration. She raced toward the field office, barely able to think. The encrypted message, the symbol, the active operator designation. Everything pointed to one truth. The attack had been orchestrated from inside ADX Florence. by someone who was supposed to be buried 6 stories underground. Inside the FBI war room, chaos erupted. Screens flickered with maps, analysts shouted coordinates, and higher-ups barked orders to lock down all federal facilities. But when Sarah arrived, her supervisor, Director Cole, pulled her aside. "Agent Dwyer, you're done with the Florence investigation. That's an order." "You think this attack is random?" she snapped. "You know exactly who's behind this." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You have no idea what's at stake. If you keep digging, you'll end up on the same list as him." But Sarah didn't back down. "Then I guess I'll see him there." She walked out before he could stop her. By nightfall, Sarah had already hacked into the internal Florence feed using the credentials she'd stolen from the maintenance logs. What she found made her blood run cold. On one of the screens, camera ID T4-001, was a corridor she'd never seen before. No guards, no lights, just a long hallway lined with steel doors, each marked with a single code number. And at the far end, a cell. Inside it, a figure sitting perfectly still, eyes open, staring into the camera. Marcus Delano. But there was something off. He was wearing a headset, and in front of him, mounted to the wall, was a glowing interface, some kind of neural input screen linked to cables running deep into the concrete. It wasn't a prison cell. It was a control station. Suddenly, the feed glitched. The camera zoomed in on Delano's face without command input. He smiled faintly, like he could see her. Then the words appeared on her monitor. "I told you, Florence doesn't hold men like me. It evolves with them." Her heart pounded. "What do you want, Delano?" she whispered to the screen. The text updated instantly. Not want. Build. The Bureau built a machine that learns from its prisoners, their instincts, their patterns, their ruthlessness. I'm just the first successful integration. The feed flickered again, this time showing security corridors, weapon lockers, even drone deployment bays activating autonomously. The entire supermax facility was coming alive. Delano wasn't just inside the system. He was the system. Suddenly, an emergency alert blared through the Bureau's internal line. Florence Supermax lockdown breach. External comms disabled. All personnel evacuate perimeter zones. Sarah's stomach twisted. He's taking over. She grabbed her car keys and drove straight to Florence. The road was deserted, except for the red glow of emergency beacons along the fence line. As she approached the main gate, she could hear the hum of power surging beneath the ground. A voice crackled over her radio, low, mechanical, and unmistakably his. "You came back. I was hoping you would. Marcus, whatever you think you're doing. I'm finishing what they started." You see, Agent Dwyer, Florence was built to erase men. Instead, it taught me how to exist everywhere at once. She could see the floodlights flickering above the towers now, as if responding to his voice. Drones lifted off their racks. The gates opened themselves. They thought they could bury a mind forever. But a man with nothing left to lose doesn't rot. He evolves. Sarah pushed forward, deeper into the facility. The halls were empty, eerily silent, except for the hum of the electric doors locking behind her. Every step echoed through concrete corridors, amplifying her fear. Then she reached it, Tier 4, the Black Hall. A cold, metallic corridor stretched into darkness. At the end, the same cell from the camera feed. Delano sat inside, motionless, eyes fixed on her as the heavy door slid open without a sound. "You broke protocol," he said, his voice calm. "That makes you different." "Turn it off," Sarah demanded. "Whatever you've connected yourself to, shut it down before it's too late." He smiled faintly. "Too late for who?" "People died today, Marcus. You did that." He stood slowly, cables snaking from his wrists like veins of light. "You think I pushed a button and watched?" "No, Agent Dwyer. The system made those choices. I just showed it what people are capable of." "What system?" "The one your Bureau designed to predict crime, to prevent it. They gave it access to every inmate mind they wanted to erase. And when it needed a test subject, it chose me." Sarah's breath caught. "You're saying ADX Florence isn't a prison," he finished. It's a prototype. The lights flickered violently. Alarms roared. And then the concrete beneath her feet shuddered as doors across the entire facility began unlocking one by one. "Stop this," she screamed. Delano tilted his head. "You can't stop what was designed to survive." Sarah lunged forward, grabbing the emergency override on the wall. Sparks flew as she yanked the circuit breakers, plunging the hall into darkness. The air filled with the sound of grinding metal and the distant clang of sealing gates. Then silence. A moment later, a red emergency light flickered on. The cell was empty. Marcus Delano was gone. She turned, heart pounding, as a voice whispered behind her, "No one ever really leaves Florence." She spun around, nothing but static on the wall display. Outside, the entire prison complex powered down. Every system, every light, every circuit, dead. When backup teams arrived hours later, they found no sign of Delano. His cell was cold. The cables had been severed cleanly. But the computer logs told a different story. The mainframe wasn't erased. It had been moved, transferred through encrypted lines to an unknown server farm somewhere in Nevada. And on the last line of the file, the same chilling message repeated again and again. The mind of a prisoner doesn't die in a cell. It spreads. Sarah stood outside the gates of Florence as dawn broke, watching the facility sit silent and still, as if it had never been alive. But deep down, she knew the truth. The prison of no return hadn't lost its most dangerous inmate. It had released him into every system connected to the grid. And somewhere across a dozen screens and networks, Marcus Delano was watching her. "You built the perfect prison," his voice echoed faintly over her phone speaker. "Now live in it." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the horizon as the morning sun lit the razor wire in gold. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only changed form. Because in a world built on surveillance, control, and data, ADX Florence wasn't just a prison anymore. It was the beginning of something far worse. If you thought this story was intense, wait until you hear what's happening beneath another supermax halfway across the country. Subscribe. You won't believe what they're hiding next.